G'day, welcome to Say It With Guitars. I'm your host, Pete Cornelius. Each episode I'll be digging deep and getting to hang with some of Australia's finest guitar pickers, songwriters, producers, collectors and makers. I look forward to bringing you these fun conversations and I hope you enjoy Say It With Guitars. Hey there friends, thank you again for yet another week or fortnightly instalment of your favourite podcast, Say It With Guitars. Today's guest, Mr. Ollie Thorpe, is one hell of a guitar player and pedal steel player. He's seen the dark side of the pedal steel and he yields it like a sword. You can see Ollie on the road with Tim Friedman, either in duo format or with the Whitlam's Black Stump Band at the moment. They're constantly on the road. Yeah, and speaking of touring, I'm going to try and catch up with Nathan Cavalieri this weekend down here in Tassie. And if you missed it, we had a great conversation and it was the last podcast. So once you finish listening to a chat with Ollie, you could backtrack and check out the Nathan Cavalieri chat along with many others, folks. This is series 2, so yeah, there's lots of listening to be done. Anyway, let's get on with it, eh? Before we crack into today's show, I'd like to shout out to our sponsor, Mr. Billy Tarrant from Tarrant Guitars. Billy's an amazing luthier and he makes some real sweet instruments. I'm lucky enough for him to have built me a 00 size acoustic guitar, which I've dragged all around the country and it's sounding better than ever. So yeah, check out tarrantguitars.net.au, Tassie's one-stop custom workshop for custom-made guitars, all guitar repairs and services. Let's get into the show. All right, I'd like to welcome to today's podcast, Say It With Guitars, Mr. Ollie Thorpe. Ollie, how you going?
Good, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, man. No worries. Thanks for taking the time making sure that you're well enough to have a chat here online today. I know you're a bit crook last week, so hopefully you're feeling better. And
feeling much better, but there might be the odd cough. But like I said, I'll go off mic.
Yeah, no worries. I'm sure us listeners can put up with a bit of that. All good, man. So you were actually in Tassie recently. I was playing some of your sweet guitar. Tell me about what you've been up to lately.
I just finished quite a sizable run with Mr. Tim Friedman from the Whitlams. We did about 6 or 7 weeks in the end, actually. I mean, you know what an Australian tour is like. It's usually the weekends, so we spread it out. But we did about 24 dates around regional sort of East Coast. We went sort of Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, and then this last weekend we were in Devonport and Hobart playing, and it's been actually one of the most musically satisfying experiences of my life, I must say. Not to overdo it, but playing with Tim in this duo mode, I play pedal steel guitar and electric guitar and slide, and he knows now, but I really didn't know the Whitlams before I'd sort of got together with Tim. So it kind of played in my favour in some way, because when I came to hearing these, he'd play these songs which for a lot of people were lifelong hits and lifelong sort of songs for people. I'd never heard them. So like Louis Baudet and Louis Baudet and see, I don't know Louis Baudet. I don't even remember. That's a very different song, Louis Baudet. So I'd never heard these songs, and so when he'd play them to me, I'd come up with ideas and parts for them that were basically just off the top of my head, and I think he really liked that because it was just a fresh.
Do you have any preconceived idea of how the song has to go, because that's how the radio's been playing it for the last 20 years?
Yeah, I think that would have been. I actually made an effort once I started playing with him not to listen to the music for that reason. That when he'd come to bringing a song to me, I'd be like, I'd just say to him often, just send me a voice recording of you playing it solo, because it meant, because we were playing piano, it was quite a tricky. To start with, it was quite a tricky sonic palette to work out. It was, like electric piano, keyboard and electric guitar, pedal steel. And you'd think like acoustic guitar would give it that rhythm, and a lot of these songs have got rock band songs. And so we definitely spent a lot of time together at Tim's place thinking about how do we not step on each other's toes? How do we find place for the pedal steel when the piano gets in the way? There's a lot of very similar sonic spaces within those instruments. So we had the incredible luxury of having so many gigs that I think if we'd had 2 or 3, it would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been as great as I think we got it to the place we ended up, which is both of us playing a lot less. By the end of the tour, it was really this dance where we just found the little spots, and for me, like, I think not to jump ahead too quickly, but playing pedal steel guitar has been one of the greatest changes for me musically, because it's all about, really, the instrument's all about fitting in within the vocal and the melody, and making 99% of the song making the song sound good.
Yep.
So I think with that in mind, it was never about showing off, or it was always about how do I fit within Tim's piano playing and vocal parts and find that space. And so often there were songs where I would have my arms folded for 2 verses, and because it was just like, well, just, last night I thought maybe you should have come in on the second verse, or actually, tonight try coming in on the chorus. And it ended up getting to this place where we really had these little vignettes worked out really nicely.
That's perfect, because like you said, both instruments, which I don't think you said it, but you could quite easily tread on each other's toes, because both can be massive pads. You put your sustain pedal down, you've got 88 keys of like massive amounts of tonal potential, and the pedal steel has, oh God, I can't think how many octaves. It's insane. Its range as well. So,
but it's it's quite high. Like the lowest string on a pedal steel, for all the guitar players that don't know, is a B, which is the equivalent would be a B on an A string on the 5th string of the guitar.
Yeah.
So it's not very low. So it's
right.
really, it really takes. I mean, the E9, which is the one I play, which is the iconically
I was thinking of
country.
The
C6.
Or C6 rather. Yeah, that goes right down low too. Yeah.
That goes right down the bottom. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. Maybe a few decades down the track, I'll think about that. Think about that neck. But so it was definitely, and Tim was quite open. Tim's very Tim and I get on really well, and so we're both able to go, that's not working. That's not working. So and even it definitely took a bit of time for me to tell Tim Friedman how to play his songs. Not that I did that, but how to me being actually, Tim, I know that you'd like the right hand there, but that's really where I'm going to sit with my steel. So, and he was really open to changing, and he's a real music fan. And so he really wanted the music. It wasn't just his songs and his show. He wanted the duo to sound good. So initially it was Tim Friedman. It was Tim Friedman with me playing with him, but by the end it really became the two of us as a musical unit, which for me was just. I was very deeply honoured to be able to give him as much of my musical thoughts as he allowed. It was yeah.
Now in the ladies' lounge.
And I guess it'd be refreshing for him too, if he has been playing these songs in a rock band setting for a while, just to sort of strip them right back to their bare elements and to have open interpretation perhaps every night of these songs that
I think he loves it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, and also the fans loved it. It was interesting going out and wondering how the fans were gonna take hearing, because often people want to hear the songs that they know in the way they like it, and Tim's fans have been fans for 30 odd years. So it was quite an interesting thing to set out on and to change the music as we did. But we didn't change it too much. We didn't like completely rearrange the songs, but the feedback was fantastic. Everyone was. I think people really actually enjoyed hearing the songs in this setting, and the pedal steel is a really difficult instrument to dislike. So
yes,
There's that too.
Such a beautiful instrument in the right hands, that's for sure. And did you sing it as well?
I would sing, and I also had the luxury of opening each night. So I was able, so I played a little half an hour set up the top and played some of my songs and a few covers here and there. So a bit of singing. I played a lot of slide guitar as well, like sort of. And I noticed that you've recently got yourself a Kudacaster happening, and so I've been playing my Kudacaster on the road as well.
Excellent.
So the only thing that held me back was how many things could I get on the plane. That was the gigs where I drove were great because I could bring 50 things, and I really loved the idea of having as many different sort of sounds as possible. I'm a big fan of David Lindley and people like that. So I was the opportunity of sort of bringing my toys on the road. And, we're all tragic collectors of toys, most of us. So
I must agree. Yeah, my house is full of little gadgets and gizmos that make noise.
And often none of them leave leave my room. So I think for me, I'm a big, I know people like to use the house amp, but I'm a big believer in taking my gear if I can. Because it's like, why, I spent that money on it.
That's right. I've invested so much money in this bloody thing.
I want to hear it.
Get it to the gig.
Yeah,
Sounds much better out of my house.
Oh man, that's the one thing. That was the one thing that on the road that killed me was I hate backline amps so much because I think I've played 3 really good ones in my time. It's so hard to just so many of them are tired and someone uses an amp and it probably doesn't sound that great and they just put it back in the box and it goes to the next gig and no one knows. And I get it and I go, oh great. Well,
thanks.
Yeah. And you have to be a problem solver. And my pedal board actually has grown to be full of little problem solving things, which has been good. But it's all I'm learning how to make bad amps sound good. And when you do make a bad amp sound good, it is a nice feeling.
Oh, it's satisfying, isn't it? And I think that's one bonus of having a selection of cool pedals is having, like you said, problem solving pedals, not only just for a particular song but for fixing crappy amps. Maybe you've got like you can almost plug into the PA with what you've got, I'd say, and get away with an okay tone.
Well, I bring this now on the road with me, which is my newest favorite thing is the Dream. I'm not sponsored by Universal Audio, but it's the Dream 65, and I must say I've been doing pedal steel overdubs from home. And I did a big Meg Mac tour playing huge rooms, and this was the amplifier.
Wow.
And it just sounded. I A-B'd it with a mic on a deluxe reverb, and I tell you, it just sounded just as good. And I didn't have any noise problems, and it really I'm really a big fan of this guy. And so I have that in my backpack just in case.
Yeah,
just in case it all parachute. Really goes. It's an ultimate parachute. Yeah.
And does it have reverb and tremolo?
It does have reverb and tremolo. I really like being able to change the tone of reverb. So I've got I've got a couple of different reverb pedals. I've just got I have to find my board, but I was a big fan of the Topanga for a long time, the Catlin Bread. Mm-hmm. You're able to change the dwell, and it's a spring, only a spring, but I love being able to change the tone of the reverb. I often pull the reverb out of all my amps. I just never use it. I like being able to really get a really specific reverb.
The truth can be unkind later. Wait until you're told. Motionless and cold, faded in hair. Strangers can't decide. Graciously decline pressure. Terrified to know. Wait until you go later in hell.
It's funny, I didn't come across that sort of style thing until I got, which I think Adam Pringle's got one now too, the Vibra King, the Fender 310 amp. And that's
so good.
It's basically got one of those 63 reverb tanks in it. So it's got the dwell tone and the mix. So you can you can change reverb sound a fair amount within, it's
that is the dream.
Goodness.
Yeah. If I had the money and the time and the baggage allowance, I'd put a reverb tank on top of my amp every time. A friend of mine, Andy Campbell, guitarist from the Good Boys. He's amazing. He has an old Fender, an Achilles made sort of Fender tank, and man, it sounds so good.
Yeah,
really.
I picked up a Kendrick one. You know, the amplify company Kendrick. Yeah, I've got the same thing, and that's just insane. It just sounds so good. You can put it even like if you're doing a mix down and you send it through a bus, and all of a sudden you've got spring reverb. It's only mono, but I tell you what, it's got some goodness in there.
Check out the Surfy Bear. There's a great company as well.
I've seen them.
Adam's got that. Adam's got a lot of great gear. Adam's actually lives down the road, and about every once a week I go around to his place and he shows me the newest thing he's got. And
we could almost start a segment like Adam's gear.
Yeah, Adam. Adam cool. Yeah. Yeah, we played a little gig on the weekend, just doing some Raikuda stuff, and he brought his new gold top and his magnetone and just played into it, you know, and it was just like, good Lord.
Yeah, right.
I think I played one solo the whole set. I was just like, I'll just play rhythm and you just take it.
I'm gonna watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about that. Tell me about that little Raikuda project you guys have been doing around Sydney.
Yeah, we haven't played in a while because it's just been, you know, like it's just everyone's decided to go back on tour. Yeah. So we've been doing that, but especially sort of around COVID and before COVID, Adam and I just would hang. Adam is one of my biggest musical heroes, Adam Pringle, for those who don't know, and he's worth checking out on YouTube. He's one of the great Australian guitar players. And he's a really good friend, and he's he just sort of knows every record. One of those guys, you know, we all have this friend that knows every record and knows every guitar player, and he's just an encyclopedia. And he's been very generous to me with his time. And so for many years, I would go around and he'd be like, he'd go, you have to check this record out and put it on, and you have to check this record out, put this on. So I learned a lot of that stuff from him. And years ago, he showed me Raikuda, and I just instantly fell. I sort of got into Blake Mills a little bit when I was younger, and Blake kind of had a bit of that sort of had that rye guitar going, and then I sort of, you know, traced it back as people do, and sort of came across rye and just instantly fell in love with that sound and the quirkiness of what he does, and how I love that. I did a lot of covers growing up, and I love that a lot of his records are just covers that he's put his completely own flavor on them. Yeah. And I was just like, man, that is such a cool way of playing music. And so I really took that into, even when I was playing in bars in Sydney and stuff, I would take sort of, I still try and take covers and try and Raikudify them, you know, and sort of, how do I take this bare bones of this song and completely change it and make it its own thing? So I think there was a few things. It was that, and it was the fact that he'd worked with so many different styles of projects like Buena Vista Social Club and the Rolling Stones and his own music, and it was just like the breadth of work was incredible. And then you YouTube him playing a few years ago, and he's still just like, it's still just so musical and happening, and his bands still plays beautifully and quiet. And I could go on for hours about how much I like it. I just think for me, it just ticks every box that I want to be as a musician. It's just like the ability to play in a group, to play quietly, to be able to listen, to not overplay, to be a great slide guitarist. All the slide playing is just, every solo sounds like a record, even when he plays live. Yep. I think he's the ultimate for me. Yeah. And then through him, I found David Lindley, I've become a real big fan of his, and I think he's another guy that little less known than Rye, but another guy that just every time he picks up the guitar, it's just a record, or it's just it could be a recording. Yep. So absolutely. They're the two musicians that I really just go back to constantly.
Yeah, and there's so much there, like you said, the width of Rye's catalogue. It's insane. He's made so much music, be it for film or a project, with, is it Alafakaturi? He did some stuff with him and stuff with the Indian dudes.
Just did the Taj Mahal thing, like all these duo albums. Yeah. He's always he's always looking to do something fresh, still. Yeah. And I just think that's
also honouring tradition. He's not like trying to take something old and make it new. He's almost like he's passing on historical content and preserving
He's just
it.
a music nutcase.
Yeah.
He just loves music.
He's
You can
tragic
tell.
like us.
He's just tragic, and it's just you can tell. You can imagine hanging out with him. He'd be the same. He'd be putting on this. You'd be, you got to check out this vinyl that no one has, that only he has, and it's this thing. And so I love people like that.
And for him to play with his son too, I think that's a great passing on tradition of thing as well. Like that would be so rewarding for both Joachim and Rye, to hang out and to play music and to share that love for making music together.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's so cool. So to be honest, Ollie, I didn't know much about your history because I couldn't find a whole lot on the interwebs.
I mean, I'm an enigma.
So you're born and bred Sydney, you've played guitar around the traps.
Grew up in the Central
Tell me a little
Coast.
bit about your history, man.
Grew up on the Central Coast
Central Coast.
Very, very musical family. My parents' names are Dorian and Lydia Mode.
Wow.
So I really didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
And dad's a great piano player and singer, and when I was always, and he's a jazz musician. So I grew up. I spent the first good 10 years of my life as a real jazz nut and jazz guitarist. And I went to the con, and I got in for jazz singing actually. So I did that.
Yep.
And then didn't like that, and always wanted to play guitar. And so I left, and then I tried out again for guitar and did guitar, and so I did the jazz course. And then I at the time discovered James Muller, who I'm sure you are well acquainted with. And if anyone listening who doesn't,
incredible.
I just for a good maybe 16 to 26, I don't think I listened to any other guitar player. It was crazy. I just so obsessed. And there was a few guys at Sydney the same. If you've never seen him play live, it's just, for me, it's just one of the most. I still think it's one of the most exciting things I've ever seen musically. I've never come across anyone that I've seen improvise with such bravery and musicality and fluidness, and the technique is all there, and it's just and you'd hear him play, and every gig I'd see, he was always trying something. It wasn't like a bunch of licks worked out. There's plenty of guys that can play fast and shred. Yeah. That's the difference. I think when you listen to James, you can tell that he's playing. He's improvising. He's playing. It's kind of like Holdsworth. Holdsworth was a similar thing.
Yep.
Like it's like he was so scary because he was improvising. And Schofield and James is the same. So I just got so deep into that. And he was a great person to really check out because he just had such a good time feel and played great lines. So I really just spent years and years checking out a lot of that James Muller stuff and his records, and which are very difficult to find these days. And then through him found people like John Schofield and Kurt Rosewinkle. But I was really interested in Australian guitar players. I spent a lot of time listening to Ben Houtman, a lot of Sydney guys, Ben Houtman, Aaron Flower, Carl Dewhurst, Ray Beadle, Adam Pringle, James when he was there. Yeah. There's a guy, Peter Koopman, who's another great Sydney guitarist I'd listened to a lot to. And I would go to gigs, and I'd go to these little bar jazz gigs where they'd play standards, and I'd take my little Zoom recorder and record and go home, and
awesome.
just that was like I would do that with records, but I think I just loved being at the gigs.
Yeah.
And
it's the excitement. It's real, it's fresh. And if it is improvised, like you've
I love bootlegs. I'm a massive bootleg fan. I was in New York about 2015 and met this dude, this young guitarist who had this huge archive of bootleg gigs that he'd gone to in New York, and he sent me them all, and I devoured them. Like
Fantastic.
just Bill Frisell playing in the corner of a room, and John Scofield playing a tiny bar, and all these guys, Peter Bernstein playing at the little gig, and Wayne Krantz and all these guys. So I just as much as I like the records, the bootlegs were just always so much more dangerous. There was this danger to them. There was this like
risky.
The records were great, and all the solos are these beautifully sort of manicured things, but then you'd hear like Bill Frisell playing in a bar in Brooklyn, and it's like the solo would be 15 minutes long because it wasn't a record, you know. And I always grew up loving Sonny Rollins and those records where he you know, those trio records where one song would go 25 minutes and he'd solo for 22 minutes, and there'd be a bass solo for two melodies, and then there'd be the head out. And the solo, like guys like Sonny, it was a journey. Like the first thing he played, you'd hear that thematic idea throughout the solo. He was a real journeyman.
Yes.
And so I've just always loved that long form playing. And so I got obsessed with that. And then I think I sort of finished the con, and I sort of started falling a bit out of love with jazz. I think I'd just done it for so long. Yeah. And it's so difficult to play well. And I've always been very tough on myself, and so I get very frustrated with the playing. That's why I don't play golf anymore as well. Just like get too into it and play terribly, and you just want to break your clubs. Yeah. So I get very frustrated with myself. So I just definitely needed a change, and I was doing a lot of covers gigs at the time, and sort of falling a bit out of love with music around 2019, and then. I'd always been a big fan of Daniel Lanois. Yes. Who, for those that don't know, is an incredibly amazing producer and guitarist and pedal steel player, and a very unique pedal steel player. He's not as loved on the pedal steel forums as you'd think. He's got his own thing with it and tunes it weirdly and plays with his fingers instead of picks. But if you've never heard it, it's just one of the most incredibly engaging things I've ever heard. And I got into that, and I just was like, always just like, oh, that's so outside my wheelhouse, but I love listening to it. And then one day, Adam, he sort of mentioned that he had a pedal steel up in the attic that he'd never played, and I could borrow it because I was sort of going, oh, it's such a big purchase, and I love this sound. And he's like, just try it, see what you think. And I just instantly it was like, this is the best thing ever. Just instantly fell in love with it. That's so cool. And my poor housemates had to listen to me go like up and down for months, and they talked about it. They said it was hell, but I just persisted. And then COVID happened, and so I had lots of spare time, and so I've just spent the last few years sort of really working on the pedal steel. And sort of coming out of COVID, I sort of all of a sudden had all these gigs on pedal steel and guitar, and because I think I'd niched myself a little bit, my employability was a bit better. So I started working with people like Tim, and started playing with Ian Moss and doing just sort of different records here and there, and meeting different artists. And so that's, I think, the first sort of 10 years of my musical life was definitely heads down, working hard. And it's only been the last 5 years where I've had the luxury of playing a lot more, and playing different people's music, and being the sideman, which has always been the goal. So it's been very blessed this last few years. I've been playing with a lot of great artists. So I feel like I'm finding my voice. I think with jazz it can be tricky because you spend so much time, especially when you're younger, you really want to get better. You want to learn how to play 2/5s and play it in time. And so much of my focus was on about getting better and the instrument and being technically better and playing faster and all these things. And it's not until the last few years where I've realized that since playing the steel and sort of getting a bit more into country music and playing with singer-songwriters, I've realized I actually really love making people's songs sound good. And I'm becoming way more content with myself as a musician and as an artist and as a voice. Yeah. So, but I think if I hadn't have gone through that sort of youthful sort of period of like working hard, I wouldn't have got to this. So I definitely don't regret it.
Yep.
But I definitely don't practice like I used to.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd love to, but I don't have that. I don't have that. Don't have that desire to play scales for 8 hours a day.
Absolutely.
Anymore.
So did you ever have lessons with James?
I had a few when I was younger, and I had a couple when I was really young, and it was just so silly because I was just like, I just sat there like this, and I remember asking him to sign one of my guitar pedals, and he's like, "Oh, okay," and he's like, "Oh, you should practice 2-5-1s." I was like hanging out with a crush, and just. But then I came back a few years later and had lessons with him, and they were great because I'd had a bit more to know. But I spent a lot of time learning with Steve Bryant at the Con, who was a great guitar teacher there, and I learned with a lot of horn players and piano players. I think I sort of figured out. I sort of was like, I know how to play the guitar, but I want to get better at music and concepts. I had a couple lessons with guys in New York, and a big thing about, like all the players that I found that played had a real unique thing, like Nerfelder and Lagerlund and all these sort of great jazz musicians, Mike Marino, was that they didn't really transcribe guitar players. They listened to horn players and piano players, and they got different phrasing ideas. So And you can hear it in Rye too. Rye's definitely done that too. So I think I don't really I sort of stopped after James. I sort of transcribed him relentlessly for a long time, and then I was like, I need to sort of start listening to Chet Baker and Sonny Rollins and Brad Meldau and people like that, and try and get a bit more into that thing because I was getting a bit worried about sounding like a guitar player. And I've always loved guitarists. I've realized that I was like, all the guitarists I like don't really sound like guitar players. Yeah, they're sort of
that makes sense totally. Yeah, because there are so many easy. I wouldn't say easy, but like patterns you can fall into really quickly and easily, and then next minute you've forgotten that you've done that, and then you're just another generic guitar player in a way. So to have that horn jazz background, I think is a huge part of what you do, and that improvisational element, and like you said, like the long game, like playing a song that might go for half an hour, and finding ways to keep yourself
and that's the thing.
And
if you're inside the box, if you're inside the guitar box all the time, if you play for a long time, it's really difficult to. It's. I mean, there's people that do it and they're great at it, but I find it very difficult to find ideas if I'm stuck in guitar land too much. If I'm playing pentatonics, and that's definitely all part of it. But if I really think like that, the big thing for me that completely changed the game. Was Wayne Kranz's book, An Improviser's OS, I think it's called, which is a book which is just basically it's 15 pages and then it's about 100 pages of figures. You just need to read the 15 pages, which is he came up with this concept of I can show you on this concept of playing where he would work on scales. He wouldn't work on scales. He would work on positions, and he would keep their fingers there. So if he wanted to work on, there were two things. If he wanted to work on playing in C, he would maybe go the 4th fret, and his only options were 4, 5, 6, and 7, and the fingerings there. So he'd have to improvise with those notes, and he'd have to make chords with those notes and with those fingerings. And so if I was to play 4, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, well, I'd use my 1, 3, 1, 3. I mean, most people would do that because it's stronger. But once I started playing, and I put a metronome, and I had to start playing musically and rhythmically with these fingers, it was just a full game changer. Yes. I was like, and then all of a sudden I was playing different chords. And then if I was playing, like if someone did want to play like a thing on C, like everyone can kind of play a D funk or whatever. But if it was like, if we were jamming, if someone wanted to play a long thing, jazzy thing on C major 7, it was like, well, I don't want to just play I don't want to just play Ionian over it or Lydian. Yeah. And then doing this, it meant I could play all these weird sort of angular lines, very short angular lines that weren't chromatic. Yep. Because I'm not a massive fan of the chromatic thing. So anymore. So practicing like that, all of a sudden I was like, wow, I can play all these crazy chord voicings I would never have thought of, and then you move it up all down the neck and every key and every chord. It's just like an endless thing. And I did that for years, and it really that was like
fantastic.
A really cool thing.
I'll have to give that a try because, yeah, like you said, if you give yourself a limited amount of fret real estate and you're putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, perhaps. You're going to
and then the other part of the book,
break habits.
and then the other part of the book was him. He sort of came up with all these his own scales, and the scales would be he'd go, all right, my scale is C, F, F sharp, B, D,
right,
and that's what he'd have to that's what he'd have to improvise with and play chords with, and so again, and it mentioned he usually have a 16th thing like and he go da 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 da.
Yep.
Do, and playing like that, and only those notes. So basically, having those limitation things really kicked my ass.
That's great.
It was really difficult, and that really definitely made me play different things.
Yep. Yeah,
and made me play more in time.
Rhythm differently, harmony differently. Everything just comes from a different angle.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I'm working on going my fourth finger to my third finger on these string jump, which I just never would have done.
Yeah.
It's not a natural guitar thing. I was doing all these fingerings that weren't natural guitar things.
Yeah.
And arguably you could find that from transcribing horn players and stuff like that. But I love this because it was such an organic thing, and every time I do it, it was my licks. They were always they were coming from me, and it was. And I wasn't practicing boring scales. I was always improvising and making music.
Yep.
So that was a really great way to just spend 8 hours. And I never get bored of it. It was just because it was always something. If I just wanted to do C, it'd take me a whole day to get through it, or a week.
Yeah.
And then D flats tomorrow, or D flats next week.
Yeah.
So that was, and then you build a chord progression. Then you go, okay, C to F minor, and it's like, okay, now I have. And then if you're working on the fourth fret and you're going 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're going C to F minor, now all of a sudden, instead of doing just all your usual F minor C licks, now you're opening up all this new stuff that you can play. And then what's great about it is then you can add chromatics, and you can add your own kind of crazy chromatics to it. As long as you're sort of aware of landing on chord tones and strong beats, you can sort of start building your own lines. And then so all of a sudden I'm coming up with all these kind of crazy, unique lines. That was just, for me, that was just like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to play.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And then, you think about music differently. Like it doesn't become a patternist thing. It becomes like, you're sort of thinking like a singer almost, like without frets or without too many boundaries.
You're just using your ears. And then, and another thing that I try and do all the time, and I do this ad nauseum, is I try and sing what I play. Yeah. And sometimes it really annoys recording studios, and Tim would laugh at me on stage because I'd be playing pedal steel, and because it's so quiet, he'd hear me going, but I found if I didn't sing, especially with pedal steel, because it was so new and because it's such a complicated fretboard, 10 strings, and it's all in seconds, I found if I didn't sing what I'd play, I'd just play a bunch of gobbledygook. It'd just be all these, because with the pedal steel, for me, it's still very pattern based. I'm still getting, I've played it for a few years now, but it's so difficult. And my dream is to be able to play, just see all the notes on it, but I'm definitely still relying on positions and different things that I can play. So for me, if I don't sing what I play, I listen back and I go, that's just not musical.
Yeah,
but if I sing, and if I sing and I play, I think one thing that I've found one thing a lot of guitar players do that I was very, very guilty of, and is something we're always working on, is that we start a phrase often with this really strong idea of what it's going to be, and we end it and we don't know how we're going to end it.
Yeah.
And I think and because we don't breathe. And so when you hear a horn player play, they have to stop at a certain point. And so I found that with singing your ideas, it made me phrase so much better, because I'd have to take it. I couldn't just keep playing.
Yeah.
So especially on the steel, so if I'd play a line, and then instead of playing a line and sort of just ending it, I'd end up playing, I just listened back and be like, wow, I'm really playing much stronger endings to this. And I was tying the bow on each little phrase. Because I definitely, when I was younger, I was, when I was excited, wanted to play fast and everything, I'd just play like, and I'd be like, oh, check out this lick. And I'd play this big thing. And then I never knew how to end it. I just sort of had the start of it, and I just cross my fingers that the next thing would happen, and 50% of the time I'd be all right. And 50% of the time it'd be terrible. Yeah. It wasn't until I started singing when I was playing, because I heard, people, it wasn't just like Keith Jarrett, it was like people that I play with. I was like, man, these guys are mumbling, and but that's what, and it's like, that's the ticket. It's like singing. James Muller does it. I've heard James do it. Him sort of mumbling along, and that's the thing. It's like, that's what I mean. Like he'll be playing the most technically crazy thing, but he's still singing it because he's hearing it. Yep. And it's like, man, if you can hear that stuff, that's the thing, So I'm like, I try not to play licks that I can't hear, because I just don't think it'll work.
To one another I stand alone, but you know that it's time to see if light really bends. Wait and see if our love can tread on shells, an ocean of regret, a vicious swell. You know that there's a way to feel okay. You will toil and might say.
That's when I play a lick that I can't hear. That's when I finish it. That's when I know that when I finish that line, it's not going to be strong. It's when I'm really connected in here and here that it's going to be like a nice piece of music. And I think that's what you can hear Rye doing it, and you can hear David Lindley. Like they end phrases musically. Yeah. So I'm still working. I'm still working on it. Like it's and I still forget to sing, but I try and remind myself. Like on my set list, I'll write sing, just and not to sing just when I play, like even comping. Like I'll just, if I'm, like such a, playing pedal steel in time is very hard actually. Like it's, like it's like a banjo flat thing, and each pick you're at a different angle, and with a guitar, it's you sort of got this sort of up and down thing. So you have two sort of velocities, and you try and get them as close, but the steel is all over the place. So trying to play really evenly and in time, I was like, well, if I sing it, because I can hear it in time in my head. Yeah. So that will help.
But because it's a mechanical instrument as well, because you've got knee levers and foot levers and an expression pedal or a volume pedal, whatever you want to call it, you've got some sort of latency between the attack of the note and like everything to come out, if you know what I mean. Like,
oh, sure.
So you actually almost have to be ahead of the beat. If you're playing on time, you most have to be like microseconds in front of that beat to get everything in place.
Yeah. Well, that and my all of a sudden, I've just sat there and played guitar. All of a sudden now I have to have my feet move in time. Yeah. It's like I'm the worst drummer of all time. So and dance, like I just can't. I'm so arrhythmical when it comes to anything but music. So or anything but guitar really. So learning how to move my feet was quite the challenge as well. But I'm getting there. One thing that I do a lot is I actually practice. I take my volume pedal out and put a book there. Sure. And so I don't, because it can be such a crutch to have the volume pedal. Even with people at home that play slide, it's very easy to use that volume pedal to help you. But it's really, on the gig it's great, but at home if you can, it's good for you to just suffer.
Yeah, I agree.
Cop it's funny.
I've sort of been dabbling with steel for the last maybe 5 or 6 years as well. It's a whole lot of fun.
Cool. What steel do you play?
It's not really a big brand. It's called a Little Buddy Pro. So I think it's a student model of a Emmons or a.
Cool.
I think
Great.
it's a dual neck though, so it's got like. Both, both
it's the real
necks on
thing.
it.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot of fun. But I've been doing that too. Is taking the volume out and just trying to get accuracy in your velocity, like making sure every note's the same volume. Because, like you said, it can be a crutch because you've got that nice swell. You can sort of turn things up and down. You can create sustain. Basically.
And when you slide into a note, you can pull in, wait till you get there, and exactly.
Yeah, so you can sort of. It's not cheating. It's just part of the instrument. It's just another expression part of that instrument. But to take that away, it's sort of like, oh shit, I better start playing properly.
It's like and even doing it on the stand-up slide. Like I'm a Derek Trucks nutcase, and he doesn't use a volume pedal, and it's the same thing. And for him, it's like he's the master at blocking all the notes around the note he's playing, and that's quite. It's and especially when you're playing as hard as he does, it's really hard. I mean, it's a muscle memory thing, and you start to figure it out as you work it out. But losing any of those crutches. I mean, even with a metronome too. Like when I practice with a metronome, I always try and make it to trick me up. So I rarely have it on the 2 and 4 or 1 and 3.
Okay.
It's always. I like, it'll be just like the first beat of the bar, and there'll be 4 beats that go by. There's a great app called Time Guru, which you might know about.
No, I don't.
Oh, it's got a random feature on it.
Cool.
It's really cool. So you can have it clicking like that, and it'll go.
Right.
And so you have to really keep yourself in time. So that's good.
Time Guru.
But Time Guru is $1. It's kick-ass. It's the best metronome. And then when I was younger as well, I used to do lots of things like, and I do it on the steel too, like I'd have the metronome on the first 16th of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 2,
Right.
and then try and just try and play rhythm.
Yep.
And sort of just see and doing that stuff, or having it on beat 4 of the bar, just having the metronome on a different, just basically when I'm in the practice room, I don't want to feel safe, or I don't want to sound good.
Yep.
That's kind of it. If I'm really sounding good, I'm not practicing the right thing. And it's hard to admit that because it feels good to sound good, but
yeah, that's right.
It's the luxury of living on your own now, because when you live with housemates, you're like, oh, you don't want to sound too fucked. You want them to know. But now I'm on my own. It's just like, I'm just going to bring it on, the suffering.
Yeah. And that's one. And metronome can be definitely a suffering tool for those who, like, I've got a few drum students, and every time I mention the name, they all like start to shrivel and like become half the shell of themselves. And it's like, come on, mate, like, you have to make the metronome your friend. Like it's a part of life. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Doing things like like one thing I learned from drummers I do a lot is the table of time, which is a really great thing to do. Like have the metronome on 40, and then go up all the way until about 10 beats, and try and fit the subdivision within the beat.
Sure.
So you'd go 1, 2. On the beat, and then 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and go up and practice like that. That's a really great way to practice scales. I learned that from Carl Morgan. Carl Morgan, another great Australian guitar player. That's really great and going between, that's a really good way of. I think a lot of people struggle with, myself included, going between eighth notes and eighth note triplets. I find I'm just rushing. I just rush like crazy, and going between, doing those exercises where I'm going between 4, 5, and 6 beats and sort of randomly changing. That really helped with that. Like being able to go from 4 on a beat to 5 and back to 4 and 5. I mean, there's always a bit of guesswork, especially with 5. Yeah. But it's a really great way to see what your tendencies are, and I think a lot of guitar players' tendencies are a rush. Yes, and so. That really helped. That's still helping me get better at doing that.
These sort of practice routines, have you like recorded them just so you can sort of hear back?
Oh, you have to record yourself practicing. Yeah, you have to. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done it as much lately. I've been playing more than I've been practicing, and so and I actually this morning I've been on playing for hours, and it's great. It's a good feeling, but Yeah, you have to record. Not that you don't have to necessarily record your whole session, I think, but definitely if you've been working on an idea for a while,
Yep.
you lose a bit of context, especially if people aren't good at getting up and going for a walk and having a coffee break.
Yeah.
Which you can be when you're younger. You want to just go.
Smash it out.
But smash it out. But I definitely, especially more at the con, like I found that I'd practice something for a while and then I'd record it, and I'd often go, wow, wait, well, that's not at all what I was trying to do.
I wasn't hearing it.
Or I'd go, that's exactly what I want to do. And so you'd get both. You'd both have a confidence boost from tackling successfully tackling what you're working on, or you go, oh, okay, I'm on the wrong path. And the great thing about, if you figure out you're on the wrong path, you can change it. So, especially working on playing swing on a guitar is really hard, I think. And I think that's why there's a lot of great, this is just my opinion, but I think there's so many great people, like saxophone players and piano players and drummers and bass players with a great swing feel. There's just not as many great guitar players, in my opinion, that have a great killing swing feel. And one thing that really made it difficult for me to continue, I transcribe, guitar players that I thought had good feels, and I'd play the lines back and I'd just be like, the feel isn't there. And so I think it's just, I'd be interested in your opinion on it, but I just think for me that I've always been obsessed with playing in time and having a good feel, and it's just my ultimate desire. Like I think I'm not so crazy about transcribing and playing fast and having all the licks, but when I hear those guitar players that get up and play a few things really in time and groovy, it completely just like wipes out anyone that can shred for me. I just think it's the best thing. Yeah,
I wholeheartedly agree. I think feel and honesty in their delivery is far superior in my perspective than someone who can shred and say a lot, And I think it comes down to personality types, perhaps. So I'm not saying that everyone's going to agree in what we're saying here.
Absolutely, it's musical taste. It's absolutely,
and that's the beauty of it. And I think it's. And
everyone hears feel differently too, I think.
Everyone hears it differently. That's right. And I'm quite a laid back, sort of humble sort of person, and I prefer to hear more laid back, humble music. That's honest and it's. So perhaps it's, I don't know if I'm just making stuff up here on the spot, but I feel that it's like, but it's mood based as well. So some days, I'll put on some shred and go, oh, it sounds great, but there are not many of those days. But yeah.
Oh yeah, but I'm sure the people that you put on that shred have a good feel as well. The ones that you like I'm sure it goes hand in hand. It's more a sort of up and coming thing. I think it takes a long time to get a good feel. There are people that you hear just always have had a good feel as well, and blast those people.
Yeah,
damn them to hell. But no, but like guys like Ray, like just all the guys I mentioned before, all those Australian dudes, like I think there's really something to be said about Australian guitar players. I think we have an incredibly amazing arsenal of guitar players down here. Yep. It's just crazy.
It is crazy.
So when I came to Sydney, it was I was there sort of 2010 when I was younger, and Sydney was just, there was heaps of jazz gigs and like all those you guys that I talked about with playing all the time. And so every night, like I came from the Central Coast and didn't really see any gigs, and then all of a sudden every night I can go and see just like one of my guitar heroes play. It was just I was like, this is Mecca. This is the best thing ever. I'm sure that would have happened anywhere I went, but I definitely really just became so obsessed with guitar and music and jazz, and I'm still as obsessed with it. I just have a few more responsibilities that I have to think about now than when I was 18. Yeah. But it was just thinking about it now, I'm sort of lost for words. The feeling, it was just it's also that thing of being young, and you're sort of, when you're young, you're excited about things very easily. But I was just so enamored by these guys that had this time feel and this way of playing,
Yep.
So that's just something I'm always working for, and even on the steel, like I want to have a good feel on the steel, and like we mentioned, it's really difficult. But it was probably really difficult on guitar when we were younger. We just forgot.
Yep. And I think coming at it from your angle, because, steel typically is a country instrument. So if you're coming at it with an improvisational guitar theory, feel-based kind of background, I think you're going to play it differently. It's going to sound different, and it's not going to be the instrument that it's iconic for. Like, I'm sure that's in your playing capabilities.
Absolutely. I'm not the guy you call for the honky tonky. No. And but I do practice that stuff because it's like what we said before about working on, you want to work on like the tough things that push you. Yeah. So I'm definitely and that honky tonk stuff and that sort of country stuff is the Bible of pedal steel. It's like that's the stuff you work on. So I definitely transcribe all that stuff and work on it. But when I go to a gig, that's not how I play. Yeah. But I think it's more like, it's like what a drummer, my good friend of mine, Miles Thomas, talks about it. Like when he's practicing, it should be as unmusical as possible sometimes. Just working on something really just technique wise. But when you go to the gig, you forget all that stuff. You don't play any of that stuff you work on. It's all sort of there within your fingers and your hands and your body, and that, like, if you're working on practicing something fast or something technical, most of us go to a gig and don't play like that. We go, or we don't. The gigs don't demand that. Yeah. So, but I think having that, spending time working on really fast 16ths and stuff means when I go to play a rhythm part in 4, very simply, there's all that work, all that subdivision work is part of my time fill.
Yep.
So I'm a big believer in working on silly hard things because I think it does, and then completely forgetting all that silly hard stuff on the gig. Yep. And not playing any of it. Yeah,
I remember reading that in a Guitar Player magazine. Must have been when I was like 12 or 13 or something like that. I think it might have even been Eddie Van Halen or someone like that, who was just saying that he's spent a life of like learning, or half of his life learning lots of cool, fast, technical stuff. Then he spent the other half of his life trying to unlearn it, trying to forget all the stuff he's learned and try and follow his heart and his head.
Yep. Yeah. But like I said, like all the stuff I practice, I can't really sing. Like it doesn't, like it's the, like it's to some extent, but not really. But when I play, I just, every now and then you play something like that, and it starts to slowly starts to become part of your thing. But I definitely, when I'm working on steel, like the stuff I'm working on the steel at the moment, there's definitely lots of hard patterns and things, so that when I go to improvise, if someone wants to play a train fill, like every now and then someone says, oh, let's do this train thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to be just stuck and sort of, I want to be, okay, I've spent a bit of time working on playing this sort of tempo. So hopefully, I'm not going to shred like those guys, but I can sort of keep my own. Well, I actually haven't played many gigs on it, but it's because COVID was I sort of was through COVID, and then I often say no. I just have been away doing other things, so I haven't been around playing the bar gigs. And when I do a bar gig, I often play guitar and sing, so I can lead it. So, but every now and then. But what I try and do though every day is do a gig at home, and so I've got a big playlist of songs that are both have pedal steel in them and don't. And I've got a few records that sort of like a few old Willie Nelson records that are sort of quite bare bones, and I sort of be the steel player.
Great.
And so I put it on and I sort of sit down and I'm like, for the next hour I'm doing a gig with Willie. And that stuff is awesome. Like if you're not playing gigs at the moment, do a gig at home. And Keith Jarrett would talk about it. Like he would wake up in the morning and play solo piano. I'm very much paraphrasing, but something along the lines of he'd try and play a concert in his house every day.
Wow.
And play with the intensity and the focus of him playing in front of 2,000 people, the same thing at home.
That's a great concept.
If you're not playing much at the moment, I think trying to get into that headspace at least once a day is really good. Because those guys that got really good at pedal steel, they didn't practice licks and like scales and stuff. They just played 4 sets a night.
That's right. They were busy playing. Yeah.
And none of us. It's not really. Some people are doing that, but it's not super. It's not super reality around sort of here. It's not in Australia anyway. There's much more of that stuff overseas, but in America
You might go.
Every now and then
my go-to play along is that Lucinda Williams live at the Fillmore record.
Oh yeah, that's on my list somewhere. Yeah,
yes, that's definitely a great play along on the steel. That one, Doug Pettibone, I think it is, plays guitar and steel on that.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. There's a few Jackson Browne records that are really good. There's a live at Spotify sessions that Greg Lees plays on, and he plays on half the record, and the other half he doesn't play on. So I think he plays guitar. So that's another one that's really good. But finding those. Pretending to be in the band is a great thing. I did that a lot when I was a jazz guy. Like if find a piano trio or something and be comp to it or something. Or like I know drummers do that a lot. Drummers find sort of drumless jazz. Like the Oscar Peterson trio or whatever, where they Ray Brown and Oscar Herb Ellis play along to that. It's like that's the best practice,
totally.
Because you're playing with the feel that's like you're playing with the best musicians in the world, basically. Yeah. And then recording that and going, do I sound like I'm in the music? So I can't recommend doing that enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I must agree. I did the same sort of thing, and I need to start going back to that because, a gig in your room once a day. That's a great idea.
Yeah. 20 minutes, half an hour. Yeah. You don't have to do it for you can find the time.
Especially that intensity, because that's one thing I know I definitely forget to practice is because at a show it's a whole different bag, a whole different lot of muscles.
Totally. Totally.
So
I personally think I play way better on stage than I do. Like every sound check we do with this Whitlam's band tour we're doing, I just eat crap every time, especially with Rod McCormack, who is just such a badass. And I go to play, and I just wasn't in the. And I'm a real zone player, and I just was in the zone. Yeah. But I'd always be like, nah, it's all right, just go away and come back, and then showtime I was always ready to go. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard. Not everyone can just be in that zone all the time.
Well, it's a flow state of mind. And, I totally agree. I
really believe.
I think. A bit of excitement, a bit of nerves get you into that place.
Totally.
To be able to just crack into it like that'll be such a difficult beast.
So, it's kind of a muscle. So if you can work on it,
Well, tell us about your solo project, mate. I know I've been having a listen to it on Bandcamp. There's some great videos too on the tube of you guys going through 3 or 4 songs live.
So I haven't been doing it much lately because I've been playing I've been doing so much touring with other artists, which has been great. But that project was that session at Golden Retriever was great. We did everything in 2 takes, so it was a very. I have my bands. I'm very lucky to play with people like Miles Thomas, Brendan Clark, and Peter Koopman in that project, and it was kind of like I'm really into bands like the Drones from Melbourne and Queens of the Stone Age, and so I took a lot of inspiration from those guys, but then sort of I think my jazz sensibility inevitably shines through, and so the chords often get a little bit more flowery, and I haven't been doing that project as much as I have. It's the thing like this. I've done a few recordings and then sat on it too long and ditched it, and sort of done that again and ditched it, and so there's a bit of that stuff going on. I'm my biggest critic, so that was a great thing to do. That was the first. I was always a sideman for so long, and then I just sort of as I mentioned before, I got very tired of doing that, and so I needed to do I needed to lead a band. I got tired of rocking up to a gig and having the band leader sort of annoy me.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll annoy myself.
I'll be the annoying guy now.
Yeah, I'll be the annoying one. Yeah, that's right. And so every now and then, so every now and then I sort of play with that band around town. But like I said, a lot of my time has been playing with other artists, and I think I just have this. I'm so tough on myself when it comes to my playing and where I should be at, that when I could be at home writing music, I definitely might find myself spending time working on a technique or learning a song, or I'm just such a musicophile, and so I sometimes think, like, why add some more music to the world when I could just learn some of it, listen to it. I know that's not that's the mindset I'm trying to get out of. It's not but that's definitely where I've been. My head's at. Like I'm like, well, I could write some music, or I could listen to this other record that's amazing that I haven't heard yet. Yeah. But it's definitely important. I think it's important for side musicians to do both, because I think I got way better at being a side person from writing music, because I was like, oh, okay, these are the chords that I sort of float to, and this is the way I play, and it made me a better. Again, I thought about melodies more, and I thought about what I would like as a like, one thing actually that really taught me a lot about doing my own band was that what I wanted as a frontman from my band. Mm-hmm. And so when I would go on tour, I knew what I wanted, which was, being on time and, and learning the music properly and being enthusiastic, when necessary, but also like speaking up like, one thing that I would get frustrated with is that I'd say, oh, what do you guys think of this? And everyone would go, yes, whatever, it's good. It's like, well, I'm not like that. I'm very much going to tell you what I think.
Right.
And I think, I think, like, I've got, especially like Miles Thomas, who's a drummer who works with me, we're very good at telling each other what we think, and we're also good at laying arms down when necessary. Sure. So, and I think that's integral to a good working. I think having a second opinion on someone's musical output is so important.
I think it's vital,
and especially because of COVID, and everyone's got a home studio now, so everyone's always working on their music all the time. And I think there's something so great about being in a room with a bunch of people, all sharing ideas at the same time, and sort of chopping and changing. When we did this Whitlam's record, this country Black Stump country band that's coming out next year, we were all in the room, and so and Tim was really open to everyone's opinions, making and everyone having a voice and being able to speak up when they thought it was necessary. And I think it just made the music so much better. Yeah. And even on the road, the same thing. I think if it was one way or the highway, you can hear projects when it's one way or the highway. You can tell, and it's. I think I learned a lot from playing with my band that a good band leader likes to hear from you every now and then. You know when to shut your mouth, but sometimes it's good to speak up.
Oh, I agree. And that way you get the best of the players, right? You get them interacting, you get them giving their 100%. There might be parameters, but that's right. Like, okay, cool. Let's make this the best thing it can be.
I've been playing guitar and singing with Ian Moss for the last couple of years, and even Ian, like, I'll go up to him and be like, I don't think that chord is right, in the thing he's playing, or and I think he really respects that, because he knows I'm not just sort of quietly sitting in the corner waiting to play, waiting to send my invoice. It's like I'm a contributing member of this sound of this group, despite the fact that the music's existed for 20, 30 years. It doesn't mean that things can be changed or things can go wrong. Yeah. So I think and I think people have me in their groups because I am not afraid to speak my mind. Yeah. I think it goes both ways. I think I probably don't get gigs because of it as well. But I'm not changing anytime soon, because it's just who I am. And I think I'm definitely open to when I'm wrong, and I love being wrong, and being told it's a great thing, because it means I'll get better, and I'll know next time that opinion probably, or that thought is probably not the right thought. So, but I think for people that are listening that play in bands, and they feel like they haven't got a voice. I think it's so important to be able to have that voice.
Yeah.
And if you're part of a band or a project, I just think look at all the famous bands that have gone by. Like so many of them have had several collaborators. It's rarely just been one person.
Yep, absolutely.
You know.
Yep, that's what makes music interesting. It's multiple people coming together, making, you know, one cohesive sound, not just like one individual writing everyone's chart. You know, that was hard about COVID and practicing all the time, and it's great. But you know, like if I am home too much and playing on my own, I really notice that when I go and play with people, I'm like my feel becomes a bit too rigid, and I forget that like a good band ebbs and flows. It's not just a metronome. That's why I mentioned playing with records, because like and that's why I mentioned playing metronome games, not just having it one in every beat, because music, I mean you know, like guitar music doesn't work like that. Like there's a lot of electronic music that does, but even that has ebb and flow. Even the vocal performance, some of that stuff it moves around. So yeah, push and pull, and my favorite music is like, you know, stuff like the Stones and the jazz. There's like old stunning records. By the end of it, they've sped up like 10, 15 BPM, and it's the best. And you don't, if you notice it, or you don't notice it, regardless, it's just like it feels good. So I'm just, you know, I really, I think it's so important to play with people all the time and have jam sessions and play with records and don't just be sort of try and not just be at home all the time. I know it's difficult, can be difficult for some people, and the situations are tricky, but it's you've got to have that balance. Oh, absolutely. Even just to talk music to people, just get out and just have a conversation about music. It's just so rewarding. And you might not agree on anything, but that's not what it's about. It's about,
if you don't agree on something, then you figure out that you figure out something from that experience. You know, you learn something from that.
Absolutely.
That interaction. So
100%.
it's having some of the best conversations I've had with music where I've been complete arguments with someone about about something, and it's been like, and I never. It's very rare where after it I go, that person's an idiot.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
exactly.
I just love to have passionate conversations about something,
because
if that person's arguing with me, they also care about it as much as I do.
Yeah.
So, and it's, you know, and it's with a person I know usually, but yeah. So I think that's, you know, that stuff's so important, and it just, again, it like every time I have that, I get closer and closer to figuring out who I want to be as a player and as a voice in music on the guitar, on the pedal steel. Every time I have a conversation with someone and I disagree or agree, it's just another little puzzle piece in the big puzzle that makes up who I want to be as an artist.
Yeah.
So I think it's just so valuable to argue and to be told you're wrong and you're right, and all of it.
Yeah, makes you know you're alive. It's good.
Don't be afraid to. I mean, I'm a very combative person, so I just love having arguments with people in all things. Like, you know, I'm ready to go.
Ready to go in the red corner.
Yeah.
Where can people track down your music, mate? I did mention Bandcamp before.
I've been a bit of a ghost of late, but you can find a record that I'm quite proud of in a band that I work with that I probably haven't mentioned to you, Pete, is Lisathe, which is Lisathe, which is myself, Brendan Clark on bass, and Miles Thomas on drums, and I play pedal steel and guitar, and it's kind of like Bill Frisell meets Bjork. So it's this sort of,
I think I have
Icelandic, seen
some of that on the social somewhere. It's quite free and open sort of sounding. Right?
Free and open, but it's not free improvising. It's we sort of the harmonic palettes are always very sort of inside, and it's more about the sonic improvising, and so there's that project. Which, you know, we like bands. We love the necks and things like that. So there's that project on Spotify and Bandcamp. Another record that I made last year that I'm really proud of is a record with Cameron Undy called The Grass, and it's a pedal steel and acoustic guitar duo record where we sort of improvised for a day, and so there's that. And then my own music is under Ollie Thorpe. You can find it at Bandcamp and Spotify, and they're the kind of projects that have come out in the last couple of years that I think are worth checking out.
Excellent, man. And your work with Tim, is that released yet? Like the Black Stump Band? I know that.
There's a few singles out.
Yep.
The record, the full record with the full lineup will be out in January, and then I think we'll be hitting the road in about April. So there's that. But I did sneak onto the Ian Moss record that's about to come out. I did sneak on that. So I got a slide guitar solo on that.
Just cut me down and bury me.
Which was quite daunting playing a Stratocaster in front of Ian Moss. I must say I never thought in my wildest dreams that would happen. So that was a real bucket list moment.
That's so good. Did you see Mossy lots as you were sort of in your influential years of growing up? Like, did you?
I
see
didn't
much
really
live?
go. I never saw him live, but I'd always hear him play and watch him on YouTube. And it was always a big fan because, like I said, I've just loved Aussie. I love that Aussie guitar sound, and Midnight Oil and him and Dragon and all those bands that had great Crowded House in New Zealand, but just that great sort of jangly 80s thing, and he had that Strat sound that just It's funny. He called me the other day and he's looking for some new amps for this tour coming up. He wants to sort of wants a sort of fresh rig.
Okay.
And I sort of said, I thought the sound on Forever Now was pretty good. What about that? What about that 73 Marshall you still have? I think I don't know there's anything wrong with it. I reckon bring that on the road.
Yeah, well, that's what I remember seeing him. Like, I've seen him lots over the years.
He tours it on every gig.
Yeah,
brings it still brings it to every gig. Drives. We played in Broken Hill and he drove 12 hours within the back of his car, which is just the coolest thing.
So cool.
He still cares so much about the way the guitar sounds.
He's still got that in the change?
Yeah, he's got that. Yeah. His pedalboard changes every gig though. The pedalboard is just a massive headache, and I feel very sorry for the guitar tech who every time rocks up to the gig and goes, wait, what's that? And what's that? It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's like, no, I need to know what these are. Right. So it's very cool. You can tell he definitely, he's just always looking for the new thing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. But like you said, with him and a Marshall and a Strat, like that's it.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, and I get to hear it all the time. I'm very, very blessed, very lucky.
Yeah, it's a great position to be in, mate. And, congratulations for, playing guitar at that level and, getting to tour the country with such respected Australian artists. So must be
very lucky, and it's very rewarding. And I pinch myself all the time. And, but I mean, it's just you just have to. I mean, anyone can do it. You just have to work really hard and hang out at the right bars.
That's right.
No. Yeah. Sometimes, and sometimes the wrong bars.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks very much for the chat today, Ollie.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Hope to catch up with you somewhere, sometime.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of Say It With Guitars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, share it around to your mates, leave a good review, and hopefully we'll see you next time.